So today we're going to do our first update on the 8845C. So it's kind of a mess right now, but I was just getting some hair algae out, so there's looking pretty nasty right now. But yeah, so basically, if you guys follow the other setups, I usually do, like, when I very first do a setup, I do multiple updates before we get to the 1 month, just so you guys can see like a lot of the progress in the beginning. And then of course over time, once it's established, there's really not much that changes. So I usually just go to, update once a month is usually just fine. Nothing changes much after that point. But at this tank, there's been so much other stuff I've been having to upload lately that this tank just kind of flew by, and I totally forgot to really film anything by this point. So that's kind of my bad. But really, I think this tank looks there's more progress at this mark than there is, if we were to look at it from 2 weeks, because the way I planted it, it really didn't really start looking that great until, it still doesn't look great, but there wasn't a lot of growth until, about this mark, to where the stems are really taking off and a lot of the plants are somewhat growing in. So that's what I'm going to do, update today, so you guys can see the 1 month for sure. And today I'm actually going to be trimming these stems, so you can see they're already grown to the top. So yeah, usually on a traditional setup, usually after 4 weeks, the stems are pretty much grown. I mean, of course, depending on how tall your tank is and all that, but usually once the stems, at that point, that's when you really want to do your first huge trim. And this one, I'm definitely going to cut these stems down quite a bit, because obviously over time we want these stems to they're not going to grow as tall. They're not going to stay this tall over time, because obviously if you look at it from a front view, obviously this will be a contest tank, so really that would look weird if we had the stems that tall all the time back there. So they're actually going to be trimmed in like little bushes back here, so it's going to be about half that height. So the way we're going to trim it today is we're going to basically hack them down pretty far down, and I basically over time I want to get to a point where they're really bushy, really low, and that's kind of how the look is going to be at this tank. But again, it really doesn't look that great right now, especially with me messing with it just now. But you guys can kind of see just over time once everything starts growing in. Of course, I mean, I'm not afraid to show what this tank looks like, as you see it right now, because this is what's part of it. I mean, all my best planted tanks, some of my best work, even the winning works, all don't look like they do when you guys see them. I mean, they all go through a phase like this. And, some tanks don't. Some tanks just do good from the start. It's just different between every setup. So that's why I want to actually show you guys raw footage of just what these tanks actually look like on mine sometimes. And that's just part of progress. This is what planted tanks are about. It's not going to look great from day one. You can't expect a great planted tank from the start. It takes time to really get to that point. So I always like to tell that to a lot of people, because it's really the truth. Some of the greatest planted tanks you'll ever see don't happen overnight. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing a trimming. So I was going to do a time lapse, but I don't think I will. It's just there's just not much there. I'm just going to literally trim the stems down, so there's really not much to see there. So I'll come back to you guys after they're cut down, and then I'm gonna do a water change, and then I'm gonna come back to you guys so the water's a bit more clear, and you guys can actually see the tank a little bit better, and we can actually go through and actually discuss what's all been changed and what's all been doing good and what hasn't done good. So I'll come to you guys in a second. So I'm back after the maintenance and the big trimming that I told you guys about. So it's about a couple hours later since I've filmed that original clip. So yeah, I did the water change, like I said, did the trimming. Yeah, it's looking actually really, really good. That trimming, I think it just got overshadowed. Like the stems got so tall, and of course they're kind of coming out this way too, to where it was kind of almost shadowing a lot of the tank. And I think that's why it just made the tank look so dark, and not really dark, because obviously, I mean, you can't really have a dark tank when you have a solar RGB above it, but it just didn't really like pop as much, I guess you can say. And once I chopped those down really low, now the tank just looks like super clear, super open. It just opened basically everything back up, and I really like that. And so yeah, I dosed them some Green Gain Plus, which obviously will help with shooting new shoots through those stems we hacked. Of course, especially when you trim them that much, definitely puts a lot of stress on the plant. So when you can add a supplement like Green Gain, it really helps a lot. But you can see how the reds, and then how it just transitioned to green. Now this is H right here. It just hasn't fully transitioned yet. Before I trimmed it, it was actually the tips. Most of it was red, so it's just that bottom part is going to be green again. So yeah, so basically the two corners are both red stems, and then the middle, when it meets up, it's all green. So it's just like transitions from red to green on both sides, which should look really nice, I think, over time. The two stems are Butterfly Mini, which is just Macrandja, Rotella Macrandja, Mini, and then I'll say, like I said, I got Atra, and then I actually, one of the newer plants that hasn't transitioned yet, it's actually grown right here. You see the rounder leaves, that's actually Rotella Orange Juice. That's also the third red stem that I have in the corner there. Fairly new, I just added it last week. But then in the middle there, I got Rotella SP Green. And then another one that has a really long name that I can never, ever actually memorize, but you guys will see it here. You guys will exactly know what it is. It's a pretty, has some very good detail and adds some texture for sure. But yeah, when it grows in, it looks pretty good. I'm hoping the SP green, because this stem, this other Rotella actually took over quite a bit. So I'm hoping the Rotella green actually kind of comes back a little bit and kind of mixes in really good, because right now the other stem's kind of taken over, and I'd rather, of course SP green does take over as well, but I think that other plant just kind of took it over first, so I just want to definitely be able to have like a good mix of those two greens in there. So I just don't want it to be just dominant by one. I definitely want to have that mix back there for sure. But yeah, everything else, of course, I cleaned it up. There's still a little bit of hair in the Ricardia, some of the slower glowers, like the moss and the bucephalus, and some of the Monte Carlo that's actually glued onto the rocks. Some of the slower growers are definitely gonna have a little bit of algae, but yeah, the S repens are actually growing on the side, so that's nice. I was happy to see that, especially over here. It's really growing in. So once everything just starts really growing in, it's just all gonna come together and look so good. It just is gonna take time, and that's why I'm glad that I did start this tank a month early. Because of course the contest, you don't start submitting until I think April or May, somewhere in there. And of course I want to start at the start of the year, but I actually started it in the first day of December, so I'm happy about that I did that, just to give it extra time for, especially this first month, just to figure out any problems or solve any problems that may occur in these first stages, of course. So yeah, I'm happy that we were able to do that for sure. But yeah, like I said, it's doing pretty good. I actually moved the power head. It was back there, if you guys remember. I could put it back there now that the stems are cut shorter again, but I think it's just a little more efficient over here. Because I feel like once the stems do actually grow in, I feel like there wasn't enough flow getting over here, so I actually put it out there. It doesn't look great, but I mean, when you stand back, honestly, it's not that bad. It's just, of course, when we take pictures, we'll just take it off and no big deal. But honestly, it doesn't even really bother me that all much, so I'm totally fine with actually keeping it right there. And of course, the twin star reactor there that helps sterilize the water column for algae too. Probably won't keep that permanently. Once the tank's really established, there won't be no need for it, but it's on there for now. But yeah, obviously the Estrepins, I mean, not Estrepins, the Monte Carlo, you can see it's slowly growing down. A lot of it got kind of cut up, so it's kind of looking weird, but yeah, hopefully it does exactly what it's doing now. It's vining down the rocks. There was one right here that actually got, you can see where it was glued, but it got sucked up, so it was barely hanging on, so I have to put a new piece of Monte Carlo right there, and a couple other spots. But you see this spot's growing in, some of the other spots that I kind of just want to naturally vine down. And this, I wouldn't mind if it just slowly keeps kind of carpeting in this area. I wouldn't mind at all. Of course, I want to keep some of the sand right there, so it kind of gives it a little bit of depth and a little bit of path going to kind of break up. But I wouldn't mind that Monte Carlo just kind of keeps growing up and down, of course, so you can see it's already growing down. But yeah, I just want to basically like a flow to where all the vines, it just feels like, because if you guys remember, the original idea that I wanted for the escape was basically to be like the bank of like a lake or a river. And with all the vines and some of the plants growing in the crevices and vining down, it's just really going to give it the impression of that. And so when you bring it down to here, which is how the picture is going to be taken, you can just see how, like, say if this was like the body of water right here and you're on a boat or something, you're cruising by, like this is the side of mountains and the stems of the trees. These are falling down trees and roots, and that's kind of the whole idea of this. And of course, S repens are like the shrubs, and the Monte Carlo, the Ricardia is just like almost like shrubs and mosses growing that are just, still hanging on and growing in between all the nature. So that's kind of the whole theme of this gate for sure. And I think we accomplished that pretty good. Of course, in a bigger tank, we could have done more, but in such a small scale tank, I mean, this being 20 gallons, I think we did a pretty good job. So, but and then of course I actually did add fish in here. I still need to get more, but obviously Um, we had some Cestropole. I don't know what this guy's doing up here at the top, but yeah, I got a school of those in here. I thought those were the perfect fish because they look like trout almost, at least to me. And obviously being the theme of like a riverbank and stuff, I thought, you know, trout's like perfect. So, and those really look nice. And I just haven't been able to use those in any scape because I just been waiting on the perfect scape for those. And so I'm happy I'm finally able to actually keep them because I've been wanting to for so long. So I think this tank was perfect for them. I'll have to definitely pick up more for sure. And these ones are also a little bigger. I know a place that sells one. They're really itty bitty and they're really vibrant. So I definitely have to pick up some of those so they get a little bit better quality ones. The ones I have in here, they'll be okay over time once we keep feeding them and they'll color up. But there's ones I can get that are definitely like high quality from the beginning. So yeah, I don't want to talk for too long. This video is already going to probably be a little bit longer than our usual updates, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys a quick run through. Of course, everything's the same under here, the Superjet 300, the CO2. Everything's been doing fine. The GLA inline diffuser's been doing great, at least from what I'm seeing. Everything's doing fine, so it's been working so far. So, and I did actually did a filter clean for the first time today too. The filter floss was pretty gunky, which I think is also what's adding to some of the algae too. I think there was just so much gunk in that filter floss. It was really dirty. So got that all fresh and clean. Put a new pure gin pad in there as well. So everything's nice and fresh and new. And yeah, so we'll just keep going with this tank and just see how it turns out over time. So yeah, definitely keep your notifications on and definitely follow me on Instagram to get you the definitely day-to-day updates like I've been saying. But other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one.